week 7 of the fantasy football season, and he has a few running backs I will look to add on the wire this week. The first guy is J.D. McKissic of the Washington football team. So it seems like each and every other week, J.D. McKissic has that big fantasy day, and that's what happened in this one versus the Kansas City Chiefs in week 6. 8 rushes, 45 yards, and 8 catches for 65 yards. So we know Antonio Gibson ain't 100% with that bad shin injury, but he's still playing through it. But in my opinion, I think Gibson might have to shut it down sooner than later if he continues to get hobbled and continues to aggravate that shin injury. But I give Gibson a lot of props to play through it. But anyway, J.D. McKissic this season, like I mentioned, every other game he's had a big game. Week 2 versus the Giants, 10 rushing yards, a touchdown, 5 catches, 83 yards. Week 3 of Buffalo, only 5.80 fantasy points. Week 4 at Atlanta, 16.90 fantasy points. Week 5 versus New Orleans, 1.70 fantasy points. Like I mentioned in Week 6 versus Kansas City, 8 catches, 65 yards, and 45 rushing yards for 19 fantasy points. So right here, he's been in every other week play. But I think the game script, obviously, next week in Week 7 at the Green Bay Packers, they're going to have to throw the football a lot. They're going to be trailing. And maybe J.D. McKissic could be a good flex option or number 2 running back, especially with all these injuries and the bye weeks coming up. The next running back's Kenyan Drake of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Kenyan Drake, he was the guy I mentioned to drop last week. After the last 3 weeks before this ball game, he only had a total, Drake, in those 3 games of 13 touches. So obviously that's not going to get the job done. But in week 6 at a tough Denver Bronco team, he got the job done, even though it was a little fluky as well. 4 carries, 34 rushes, and a touchdown, and 2 catches for 39 yards and a touchdown, where he scored on a nice wheel route up the sidelines to the end zone. So right here, Josh Jacobs still got tons of touches in this game, with Kenyan Drake still only getting 6 touches in the game. But right here, Drake, he definitely can receive the football out of the backfield better than Josh Jacobs. But Jacobs still the alpha number 1 in that backfield with 17 touches to 6 touches of Kenyan Drake. But right here, Drake's available in a bunch of fantasy leagues after tons of people dropped him. So I wasn't totally off on him, but it was a little bit of a fluky game to have 2 touchdowns, in my opinion, on 6 touches only. But now you got to keep an eye on him. And especially, like I mentioned, with buys and injuries, he's a guy that has to be rostered, and he's available right now in 57% of fantasy leagues. The next running back I would look to get on the wire this week is Chris Evans of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Evans played a nice backup role in week 6 to Joe Mixon. And with Joe Mixon, he looks pretty much almost 100%, in my opinion. Had a big fantasy day with Mixon, so that was good to see. But Chris Evans in week 6 at Detroit, 4 carries, 18 yards, 3 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown, including a nice wheel route as well for him up the sideline to the end zone. So this guy, he's a versatile running back, more of a receiving third down back than an occasional between the tackle running back, but he still could go out there and make plays. And I think he's a good option to add to this Cincinnati Bengal offense, where they could use a couple more playmakers even here and there, even though they got the great rookie Jamar Chase at wide receiver. So Evans right now, he's available in a whopping 96% of fantasy leagues. And if you're a Joe Mixon owner, he's a guy to definitely add to handcuff to Mixon, because Mixon, he's been injury prone over the last couple seasons. The next running back's Devonta Freeman of the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens here, they've been using a 3-back committee, it looks like, over there in Baltimore. But Devonta Freeman, he still has juice left, in my opinion. The last 2 weeks here, he's made some plays and looked good for Baltimore. Week 5 versus Indy, 3 catches, 34 yards. And week 6 versus the Chargers, he got 9 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown. So all the running backs in this one scored touchdowns. Le'Veon Bell scored a touchdown. Latavius Murray scored a touchdown. And Devonta Freeman, obviously. So Freeman right now, he looks like the best back out of the all 3 over there. He's available in 98% of fantasy leagues. And Latavius Murray left this ball game with the injury here. So we'll see if Latavius Murray is going to play next week. And if you don't, Devonta Freeman, I think, could definitely be a good number 2 running back or flex option in Cincinnati Bengals. He could go out there, he can make plays, he can run between the tackles, and I think this Baltimore team actually likes him. And the 5th and final running back I would add on the wire this week is Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. I thought Brandon Bolden was going to get a few touches in this ball game in Week 6 versus the Dallas Cowboys, but that wasn't the case, and Stevenson finished 5 carries, 23 yards, and a touchdown, and added 3 catches for 39 yards, so he's a big physical back at 250 pounds. And I know Damian Harris looked good in this ball game, and he looked pretty much almost 100%, but right here, Stevenson's a big back. They drafted him pretty early in the NFL draft for a reason, and I think sooner than later, this guy's going to take over as the number 1 running back over there in New England, especially if they keep losing ball games. Now they're 2-4 on the season, and Buffalo Bills are obviously going to run away with that AFC East. But right here, Stevenson's a guy to keep in mind. He's available in 89% of fantasy leagues, and this guy could definitely make some plays in the receiving game and obviously in between the tackles with his size. So that's a few running backs I would look to add on waivers for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.